Hi everyone and welcome to the What the Fuck Show. This week we're talking about double standards, and our world seems full of so many of them at the moment. This conversation could probably go for hours. With Will and I this week we have the lovely Jenny Morgan. We've got Sunnies. Hey hun.
Hi.
And we've got the adorable Kitty.
Aw, you're adorable too.
Not as adorable as you. No way. And, of course, we've got Purple Robes with Orange, who I didn't just forget. I know he's not back yet. So, he'll be back in a sec.
I'm not in the mood for you today.
But Perp's
avatar is here and ready to
go. Okay, good stalling. I made it.
Oh, brilliant. That was perfect. See, I told you he'd be back in a second. So, how is everybody this lovely Thursday evening for you guys?
Well, I'm a little annoyed because I love lamb and Jenny's making me feel bad, but...
But those are so small and tender little babies.
Wow, are we really...
You know what? I also like veal, so I don't want to hear it. Stop ruining my favorite food for me.
I know this is controversial in
lamb
our
is
community,
awesome.
But, we eat a lot of things that had eyeballs, And if you looked at them, they would be just as beautiful as that lamb, But they're tasty.
It's funny.
And they always taste good in marinara sauce. Everything does.
I'll eat lamb and veal and stuff, but yet I've turned into my mother who refuses to throw away anything with a face.
I've watched a lot of reviews from people and they talk about other kinds of animals that people can hunt for. You'd be surprised at things that they say are really good.
I believe it.
That shocked me. This one guy had these fried skunk meatballs.
Ew!
Roadkill!
Really
Barbecued roadkill.
It's not Thursday if we're not talking about fried skunk. It is not Thursday night if we're not talking about fried skunk.
It's so crazy.
I had
I've eaten elk burgers before.
I had alligator in Texas.
See, but there's a double standard. Why is some meat perfectly fine and it's okay that we eat it, and another meat isn't? I get it if the animal that we're talking about is on the endangered species list, but what about eating insects? Because insects are so simple to breed. It's easy. You can process them and get the protein out and make protein little burgers out of the protein from them, and you wouldn't even know that it was insect meat.
But it depends on where you live.
Growing up, I think I have eaten virtually everything that you can find in the Michigan forest.
Absolutely. It depends on where you're from.
Yeah, with my uncles and my grandfather, it was if you had a problem with an animal on the property, you shot it, but you didn't let anything go to waste. So I know I have had skunk and porcupine.
So part of it is a frugality thing?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
If you had porcupines in the woodshed, you had porcupine for dinner.
How does porcupine taste? That must be very
gamey.
Well,
I don't really remember.
Sharp.
It's a tender
sharp,
but it's kind of sharp.
I have family members in Savannah, Georgia, and it's nothing for them to post a possum that they just shot on Facebook.
But when you eat porcupine, do you end up picking your teeth with the needles?
With the quills? Oh my god.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's just being frugal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Don't waste it.
Uses of the same dead animal. You know what? There ain't nothing wrong with it.
So to completely change the subject, to go back to double standards, how do you guys feel about people trashing others about how we're dealing with Rush Limbaugh?
I'm coming over to your house and eating your dog.
Yeah.
What's that got to do with Rush Limbaugh?
Come on over.
As far as
I don't have a dog because somebody won't let me have one.
Yeah, I've always, favored the thing of, for at least the sake of the family, trying to be polite about somebody who's died. But yeah, I have made an exception just because this is somebody who has said that me and virtually all my friends should be dead.
Absolutely, we should remember that. And to answer Junie's question, my house is infested with crickets, and I have a great microphone right now. So if you hear that,
That's what the clicking is. Huh?
that means
the
that my
cracking-
microphone's working.
The
I thought it was
the
at
clicking
my
is the
house.
crickets in Will's house.
No, my
Crickets, ew.
Yeah, he got me to hop on last night. I need to check my new microphone. I go, it's all right, but there's this weird noise in the background. He goes, it's my crickets, and I go, oh
I don't
bullshit, it's
even-
got to be your microphone. He goes, no, watch this. And he made a big noise so they'd all shut up, and it was dead silent.
oh yeah,
Oh my
my
god,
God.
I can hear your crickets.
Actually, did you know that's how Buddy Holly got the name for his band?
oh,
That they
great.
were trying to record in the garage, and there was a cricket that they couldn't find, but the noise kept showing up on all the tracks they recorded.
Oh wow.
Christ.
Hilarious.
So yeah,
I've
Rush
actually
Limbaugh.
eaten crickets. When I went to the Smithsonian Museum, they actually had little like lollipops that had crickets or scorpions in them. So like I've actually eaten one.
I've had
It's
chocolate
actually on my
covered chicken.
bucket list. There's some kind of liquor that has like an actual dead scorpion in it. Years ago, I saw it as a kid. I had to go to the liquor store with my uncle. Don't think it not Size Strike, a different one, and don't think it was like an alcoholic kind of thing. Like he was just like buying wine for a family dinner or something. So I just want to get that out of the way. But yeah, I was like looking at the liquor, and 5-year-old me sees like an actual scorpion in this liquor bottle, and right then and there, it like became part of my bucket list to
Well,
try.
I know
this.
there's a tequila that has a worm in it.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah,
people
everybody
don't
knows about
like
the
worm.
worm tequila.
Yeah, people don't quite get what the significance of that is. The reason that there is a worm in every bottle is to check the proof.
Really?
Yeah, that if the
How does
alcohol
that-
level is not high enough, the worm will swim around. So the alcohol has to be high enough to kill the worm for them to know it was good tequila.
We learn something new every day with you, don't
That
we,
is
Purple?
kind of cruel.
It really is.
It's
really
a double
is
standard that we believe in humans over everything. You know, so it's one of those double standards that we have.
But going back to Rush Limbaugh, my opinion
Do we
on the
have
matter
to? I mean,
is
he's gone now.
Speaking of worms,
you are not obligated to feel bad if somebody dies, especially if that person was toxic as fuck and has caused harm to you or your community. Full stop.
Exactly.
I
No,
don't think
my
it's
boss
right to
texted when he
celebrate
died.
someone's death, though. But
Well, my boss texted me when he died, and she was like, "Yeah, honestly, I feel bad that I cheered, but at the same time, like, look at all the harm he did. Look what a horrible human being he was. Like the fact that Trump felt the need to award him the Medal of Freedom or whatever. Shouldn't that speak to how terrible somebody was? Because you have to be a really bad person to get a medal from Trump.
We are not obligated to like everybody.
Well,
No.
I
You're
can
not.
also speak to this on a more personal level. That when my dad's father died, the sentiment was, thank God he's gone. And that wasn't just the family, that was the entire town.
Exactly.
He
I'm
was
a
just
big ass
a
he's-
grumpy old bastard who couldn't tolerate anyone.
Oh well, in that case, you know,
the problem with adulations for Rush Limbaugh, and as opposed to nasty, I'm glad the bastard's dead kind of stuff, is that it raises him to a plateau of wonder and honor and stuff that he just should not be allowed anywhere near. It's like,
I agree. He's going to be in a book with people who actually have represented this country in a positive way.
Yeah.
The man, verbalized his hatred and things
yeah,
all the time. He said he wasn't kidding. He
Yeah.
God, he just attacked people with such viciousness and
Well,
devil may care attitude.
in a country that's supposed to value equality for all, he made a career out of promoting bigotry.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
he did.
And I think it's also very important to notice that he is one of the primary founding building blocks of the negative nature of politics today, and the growth of the right wing hatred.
Oh yeah, he definitely set the stage for Trump
oh,
coming
he
in.
played such a huge part.
How's it going, dog? John
Hi, dog.
Smith Esquire.
I'm good, Will. I'm very good. I'm going off the grid.
We have absolutely nothing that we owe Rush Limbaugh, and every bit of disrespect he gets, he deserves.
Why should we show him the dignity that he refused to afford to anybody who wasn't a straight white Republican rich man, you know?
Absolutely.
On the side of that, there is the element of
people
allowing
talk about
family time to
don't
grieve
speak ill
as
of the
well.
dead. People talk about don't speak ill of the dead, but I'm sorry, there are some people out there who have really earned it. But my concern is, you know, this could spiral into, because, you know, the conservatives are not going to forget the fact that a lot of people are happy Limbaugh is dead, and they're going to treat it as being an excuse to celebrate when, for example, what about when one of their most hated targets, like Obama, when President Obama dies?
Well, they've already been doing that, though.
They've already done it with Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly
You know what? That's true. That's true. They did.
They trashed her. They made horrible memes. They were putting them everywhere. So it's not like this hasn't happened before.
And
Yeah,
honestly,
so
who
they
gives
don't
a
like-
fuck
they don't
if
like
they
their own-
trash Obama?
That's
Like,
what I'm
seriously,
saying.
when he's dead, like, honestly, the dead don't fucking care.
Exactly.
I mean, sure, their families
true.
might be hurt by it, but ultimately, like, especially for a public figure, you have to think, like, they're getting shit on while they're alive. Like, what does it matter if they get shit on after they die? Like,
And Rush Limbaugh's family, they know that he's an asshole. They may like him, but they know other people think he's an asshole.
There's two sides of the hypocrisy and double standards that can come from this, though. I mean, we criticize the other side for going after Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she died. In this case, we shouldn't be upset when other people mention to us, well, maybe you shouldn't say bad stuff. Now,
in this case, we've chosen sides, though, so that happens when you stand on one side of an issue.
It does, but we still shouldn't be hypocrites about choosing those sides. We should be able to say, okay, that's fine, you can have that opinion, but because you had yours before, we can have ours now.
So
yeah, be principled about it.
Yeah, be principled about it. You can complain about us like we complained about you, but we're still allowed to say that this person's an ass.
No, I agree, because the one thing that kind of set me off yesterday is that people were tone policing, and I said it on Purple Stream. I'm like, just give me today, because I don't think people realize who this man was.
Yeah,
you know. So I have a question for your dog. How did people react to Rush Limbaugh where you live, or did anyone care?
Well, UK, we don't really care about that much, but yeah, some of us who were into sort of that was, I wouldn't say pleased, but you know, relieved sort of thing that platform has gone forever.
There's definitely one less talking head spewing hate. That's how I look at it. It's like, I'm sorry.
I remember there was a post
monster.
There was a post from someone in the UK which was a response to somebody had posted, Rush Limbaugh is cold, to which somebody replied, and Margaret Thatcher is dust.
Somebody posted, ouch, 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 it's hot down here too.
Yeah.
I don't believe in that stuff, but it made me laugh.
I saw a lot of the ding dong, the witch is dead.
I put one on Stool's. Stool posted the moment that he found out. I posted one on Stool's thread. But it's important to let it out, because, you know, this person would be all too happy if any of us had passed. He would have called us degenerates, and, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, not a nice person.
You know,
being dead does not erase the kind of atrocities that came out of his mouth. You know, a lot of it's on the internet. It's there forever. It doesn't go away.
If you want to go,
yeah.
Like, I do want to speak on that. Like, what the fuck is up with the fact that as a society we tend to whitewash people's records away when they die? Like, dying is some grand martyring gesture that, you know, even though everybody fucking dies, everybody fucking dies. It is not something special. Everybody here on the panel is going to die one day. Everybody on the planet's going to die one day. The whole fucking planet's going to die one day when the sun fucking decides to expand. So, dying is not special. Why the fuck can we not talk about your shit record?
Exactly.
I agree.
Does that come from the Christian perspective, though, that Jesus died to cleanse the world of sin?
You know, I never understood
Then
that.
why do the Christians hate gay people?
Then why are we still hurting each other?
Yeah.
I've been asking that since I was a kid. I was told that as a kid, and I'm like looking around like, Are you kidding me? Is that the secret?
No, that is like a huge fallacy. Like, okay, if the world's supposed to be cleansed of sin, why does it still exist?
All right, the chat are complaining
why do
about
gay
your
people
mic
burn
again,
in
Will.
hell?
Do you want to mute yourself for a minute and we'll just make sure it is your mic that they're complaining about?
Oh, that's so much
Yes,
quieter.
that is so much quieter. We have an issue.
Just throw
Well, that's the
something at
last
it.
time he uses Cricket Mobile. Ha ha ha.
I had cricket. They were amazing.
Really?
Cricket is-
Because the Cricket's doing nothing but causing an annoyance right now.
Yeah, although,
We're
yeah,
gonna have Cricket jokes for days on this.
We'll just throw something at it.
yeah, go kill the crickets.
Just get a bearded dragon and let it roam free.
Oh,
You know what's funny? You know what's funny? I let lizards come and live in my house. I let them live in my house. They freely walk in my house because they have a
So
million
you're like
crickets
a
to eat.
crazy cat lady, but for reptiles.
Well, they live in my house because they have crickets to eat.
Yeah, but
Endless
you're
cricket.
one of the lizard people. We know that.
I am.
Oh God,
I'm a-
no! Don't start talking about lizard people, because I got a conspiracy theorist sitting on the bed next to
I
me.
also
who's
want to
gonna
point
dome
out
off
to the
about
people in
reptilians.
the chat, we've still got a couple of spaces here. If anybody is in our WTF group, I actually posted the link if people wanted to help in. So first in, best rest, basically.
The more the merrier.
On the lizard people, I just have to say, hashtag not all saurians.
No, we know it's not you, Purple. You are
Yeah.
you are an exception, and we love you.
Yeah, we love you, Pips. So yeah, I mean, there's yeah, Rush Limbaugh. We don't have
Okay,
to
here's
dwell
a
on.
fun double standard. So
Yeah.
we don't have to dwell on Rush Limbaugh. Why is it that Will could sit, on this panel not wearing a top, showing his little man nipples, and if I tried the same thing, all hell would break loose? That's a double
please,
standard
this
right
world
there.
would be shut
It
down.
might
I wanna
not
say
actually,
one thing.
Kitty. I mean, if all of us women
because-
were naked on this
Because
stream, we'd probably
man
get a
nipples
fuck
are
ton of
ugly
views.
and yours aren't.
As king of the crickets, I want to say one thing. My man nipples are like this big. They're huge. They're huge, and they're the darkest thing on my body. They are huge and they're dark.
You know what?
Just saying.
Here's another double
Kid
standard. Why do male nipple sizes not matter? But if a woman has huge nipples, that's seen as some massive deformity and a depreciation in value.
It depends on who the person is, and if they're that picky, you shouldn't be with them anyways.
To be
Facts.
perfectly honest, men are incredibly picky when it comes to nipples. If they're too big, you're
They're picky
kind
when
of
it comes
weird.
to any part of the woman's body.
Oh yeah, and if your nipples are too small, it's like, oh yeah, that's not right.
That's actually a complete double standard because no one should have say over anyone's body.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Exactly.
And if you have an odd
especially
number
when
of
you can't
nipples,
control it. Like, you can't control, like, men can't control how big their dicks are. Women can't control how big their boobs are. And don't anybody say anything about, well, plastic surgery, because I'm not talking about that. If we're assuming au naturel for everybody here. So,
You've got crickets, I've got a cat meowing its head off at me.
and I've got
And Australian
a bag of
crows.
tips.
And Australian crows smoke cigars because they're so much deeper than the California crows.
Oh, our
I'm
crows
just
are
saying,
really noisy.
you do. They sounds like they're barking.
It's a double standard.
Man, we're just coming across them everywhere, just in a casual process of shooting this shit, aren't we?
I actually downloaded a whole heap of cartoons about double standard that I was going to show on this, and then I realized that for some reason OBS won't let me share things. StreamYards won't let me share things whilst I'm sending its data off to OBS, and I'm like, you passed it. I can't do it at the moment. For some reason, there's something up. So, and I didn't have time to send all the cartoons to Will so he could do it, and I could just grab them off. So
So can you still hear the crickets?
fortunately,
Yes.
no, now it sounds better.
yeah, that
They're
sounds
off in the distance. It's because I have the.
I think I hear a little cheep, cheep, cheep. I think I hear it.
I mean,
Kitty.
you could try turning the sensitivity down on the mic so that, it doesn't pick up the ambient noise as much, but
I'm gonna
that's
have
just
to-
a suggestion.
I'm gonna have to figure that one out.
The other thing, Will, is if you've got some kind of screen or something you could put behind your chair as a backdrop, that should keep the microphone from picking up
you
things
could get a green
behind you.
screen.
Oh man.
I
I can
have
only
a
see how that
screen.
would
If
end.
you want to get really weird and awkward, I do have a screen. I'll go get it right now.
Or you could go to the
my
hardware
goodness.
store and buy like 20 gallons of paint and spray everything until you kill the damn thing.
Dear.
Well, you just get a bug bomb since it's an enclosed area.
Here's another double standard. Since I mean, we've touched on Rush Limbaugh. Let's stay in the realm of right wing hatred. Why is it that when Trump won, he won, he's your president, you have to deal with it. But once Biden won the election, all hell was allowed to break loose. The Capitol was stormed. They're planning on doing it again, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Why is it that the Democratic Party and leftist, more liberal party why is it that they have to suck it up and deal with it, but conservatives can throw every temper tantrum under the sun? Why is that a thing?
Yeah, the conservatives lost their mind. Oh my god, snowflakes, when all we did was hashtag not my president.
I've always found that
we had relatively peaceful protests. A lot of times, people, especially when people talk about the Black Lives Matter riots, most of those were started by white supremacists just disguising themselves as protesters and going and looking to start shit.
I've always found that as the biggest hypocrisy, really, that conservatives are very quick to call anybody on the left a snowflake, or you're a social justice warrior, you're so it's woke, and these will become insults and pejoratives from them. And yet, as soon as something happens, they're the first ones to sit in the corner screaming their fucking heads off and stamping their feet.
Well, we know
like
projection.
My 3-year-old handles things more maturely than they do.
Projection is real. We know projection is real. So the people who are not what they say they are the first ones to call people out and call them snowflakes when they themselves are the snowflake.
Yeah. Well, and the whole thing about the far right being so against Antifa. So you're anti-fascist. What's that say you are?
You a fascist. That's the double negative. Double negative equals a positive. If you're anti-fascist, you are by default a fascist. So you can't say you're not a fascist if you're anti-fascist.
Okay, but I'm not even trying to be mean, but let's be fair. Like, the modern American education is like the equivalent of like a, 6th grade education in other places.
And that's why I only have a GED.
Antifa to me is so pinch of salt now that I just blame them for everything. If I stub my toe, Antifa moved the coffee table.
Yeah.
If the dog farts, it was Antifa.
For me, it was always thanks, Obama. Thanks. I used to say that for everything. I kind of miss that.
To tie this back to the Rush Limbaugh thing, I was actually thinking about that last night. That the reason the Civil War is taught so different in the southern states is because nobody wants to admit that their family was on the wrong side. And for 150 years, we've all gone along with that. So it's like, to soften the blow, to not tell them that their family was on the wrong side, we've let them carry on with this mythology that, they were somehow noble about it.
I forgot I had this.
Would you say that America has basically been split from the Civil War? In a way.
Absolutely.
I think, but it's the stories we tell ourselves. It's the lore of the Civil War, because most people don't even know their own history.
It's because the northern states and the southern states have a different history for the last 100 years.
Emancipation
There's actually a movie, I think it's on Hulu, about what would have happened. It's kind of an imaginary retelling, assuming the South had won the Civil War. It's actually pretty, I think it was called CSA or something.
The Confederate States of America.
I never saw the whole thing, but I really want to.
I rented that at a Blockbuster in Oregon, and I remember taking it to the counter, and the guy looked at me like, "Are you serious? You're seriously?" He berated me, and I'm like, "I love cruddy movies."
It's clearly satire, and you gotta appreciate that.
Newt Gingrich also wrote a book about if the South had won.
It's a common theme. There's a lot of books about it.
That would have been dreadful for you. You would have still been having
been in the dark
slavery up and into the 50s.
Eventually, what a lot of people don't know, like in the South, there were way more people of color that fought the war than for the Confederates than they think.
Yeah.
Just look at
Really?
go look at the census. There was more black people.
Yes.
There was more black people in the South than there was white people. You know.
You know what?
And as somebody
That's
that they
a lot
were
about how
forced.
whitewashed my
no,
history was.
I completely agree because I love getting in these arguments with people because I actually come from like I said on Granny's stream, my family did blood tests and everything, and somebody earned a PhD. So this is from the 80s on. This is not just something that happened overnight.
Yeah.
But in my family, there was 27 people that fought for the Confederacy, and 2 so far. And you know, as time goes on, we find more people that fought for the Union. But it's because most of my family was from Clinton, South Carolina, or Savannah, Georgia.
Well, and as far as how long slavery would have continued for, I think that would have really been a question of economics that, you know, would other countries have put economic pressure on them to end it?
I think the one thing...
you know, so would, like, you know, the North and
That's
Canada and France and England decided they weren't going to trade with them anymore until they ended slavery.
The one thing they're still fighting down there is Reconstruction. So it's been how many 100 years and people still have not let it go. The fact that we're still talking about it, the fact that it's even an issue, shows that it's been passed down from generation to generation.
Well, the fact that until a year ago, there were still states that had the Confederate battle flag flying at their capital.
What were you going to say, Jenny?
Nothing. It's not important. Just go ahead. Keep talking, everyone.
No, I agree. South Carolina took it out off their flag. Georgia as well. Gosh, I can't even. They've changed quite a few state flags.
I would have thought that religion would have played a big part in this, in the divide, of course. But especially the Catholic Church, they seem to embrace war, don't they? So they can get their dogma in there. Oh, we're helping. No, you're not. You're just getting your dogma in there.
Oh, we're saving everybody. Like, from what?
And also, we're actually reaping the benefits of what happens when you let evangelicals rewrite history. Because 20 years ago, they were getting into textbooks in this country, and here we are now with people that think the earth is flat. They don't believe what they see. You know, and we're now slowly starting to see what happens when you let evangelicals into your school system.
You know, it's funny. I got into an argument with a flat earther the other day, and he got so mad. He was like, you know what? I'm just going to walk to the edge of the earth, and I'm going to prove my point. But it's okay. He'll come around eventually.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
You know what? It was just so relevant. I've been waiting for an opportunity to crack that joke at someone other than my boyfriend, who always gives me dirty looks when I tell jokes like that. So, finally, someone who can appreciate flat earther humor.
So, I actually have a friend whose father does genealogy, and he was looking into my family history. Now, on my father's side, on his mother's side, they escaped after World War II and came to the United States. But on his father's side, they'd been in the United States since the 1600s, and actually, my however many greats was an artificer and was actually on the field with George Washington, and actually might have even spoken with him. But at the very least, I think it was General Shaw. It was that really, like, that winter that was like memorialized.
That's awesome.
That really rough winter. And then in further along the line, when you get to the Civil War, my great however many times grandfather fought in the 36th Massachusetts Infantry, and they actually saw a lot of really, like, important battles, and, like, finding that out about my family was really awesome. And I'm not gonna lie, I was really relieved when I found out that they were on the right side of that conflict.
You know, I'm
afraid of what I'll find out if I ever look into my genealogy, because, I mean, on my mom's side, I mean, I know, like, Cy Strike and my mom were not raised to, you know, be hateful and all that. They all turned out, Like, my grandmother was Democrat through and through. All her kids are registered Democrats. So I'm assuming, like, that side would have been on the right side of history for the most part. But on my dad's side, like, the way I see all these hateful pro-Trump posts, and oh my God, one of my aunts on Inauguration Day, oh my God, Satan's coming into the White House. Like, I don't know how long they've been in the country, so my fear is that I would look into it, and it's like, oh, great. It's bad enough I can name any type of criminal in my dad's family. Now I find out they were Confederates, too.
But you can look back into anybody's history and find some bad stuff that has happened. I don't think that's fair to tie yourself with what happens in your family's history. Because it only takes one person in the family to change that in either direction. So it is kind of a double standard to hold yourself to sort of people to hold you to accountable for what your ancestors did. I've always thought that was wrong. I understand it from the point of view of a country being held somewhat responsible for what the country did in the past, in that concept of reparations and things like that. I don't necessarily agree with bankrupting a country over reparations. I think that's ridiculous. But some form of reparations, apologies and some form of reparations is something that goes forward.
Well, but you can't push it forever. Like, at some point,
you definitely can't.
Giving and letting go. And
the main cause of World War II was that the treaty that ended World War I left Germany unable to have a functional economy.
Exactly. So you can't hurt a country too bad over something that people did in the past, because you end up ruining that country over it. But there is nothing to stop a country from apologizing for something that happened in the past. You've got a two-faced issue there with in some countries where it's like, oh, we can't apologize because that means we're going to get sued and then we'll lose all this money and then the country won't be able to function. No, fucking apologize up front. Worry about the other bit later.
No, be the bigger person. Take some responsibility.
Because apologizing is acknowledging.
Part of making reparations is absolutely taking accountability for your past mistakes. Like, look at in lieu of a second debate, Trump and Biden hosted separate town halls, and somebody actually asked Biden, a lot of people criticized him about the 1994 crime bill, and they asked him, do you think it was a mistake to sponsor it? And he took the ownership, like, yes, it was a mistake. Little things like that. If one man can do it, so you can also give a country a chance to do the same thing.
Yeah. But people don't take personal responsibility anymore.
Oh,
and I'm saying that.
That's another double standard. Conservatives don't have to take personal responsibility for the fact that they literally stormed the Capitol and tried to hang Mike Pence. But us liberals, but the Democrats were the party of the KKK. They should take accountability for that. Like, really?
Well, as
double
Maya
standard.
saying in the side chat, reparations aren't about what happened back then. It's about what's going on now.
Yes.
And that's the problem with that we still have a double standard that people with darker skin are not treated the same way as people with lighter skin, especially in the justice system.
Yeah.
Oh, still to this day.
And that also leads us into another aspect that also leads us into another aspect of double standards, which is whataboutism.
What were you going to say, Jenny?
Reparations aren't going to change anything in terms of our racial relationships. Anybody thinks it will is a fool. The Civil War, of course, divided the country, but the country never did anything to try to put itself back together. Emancipation happened, but reconciliation never did. Reconstruction was started, but it was never finished. It became the Jim Crow laws. And until we face up our white history of hatred and just being perfectly satisfied to kill
genocide, what happened to the Native Americans.
Yeah.
The Holocaust wrong, but the genocide of the Native Americans.
Okay. Please, may I finish?
Let Jenny finish.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Go ahead. I knocked me off track.
I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. Reparations is a whole other subject that we could all get in a fist fight over one day, because I have many controversial views on that would tick off a bunch of people and get me a bunch of hate mail.
Yeah,
as somebody who is actually a direct descendant from slaves and people who, like, you know, on both sides were born in this country slaves.
Anything to do with reparations is the very last thing you want to talk about. Your priorities have to be acknowledging the fault that you've done and making sure it doesn't fucking happen again. Because there's no point saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Here, have a bit of money," and then doing it again to the next generation, because that's fucked up.
And that's
so
the
you make
problem,
sure it
too.
doesn't happen again. You make sure the laws are right to protect people, and it doesn't happen again. And that's the same for anything. That's the same for black rights. It's the same for LGBT rights. It's all the same. I'd rather actually you spent the money on educating and giving better outcomes for people than actually giving people money. So you say, hey, look, why don't we create a few more scholarships in the US for black students and LGBT students to make up for the crap we've done in the past, and we can give a form of equality to the next generation that wasn't there before, because that's making up for past mistakes. Just throwing money at people doesn't. Throwing money at outcomes does.
Well, here's
what
the thing
Jenny was saying about Reconstruction started, but was never really carried through. And yeah, the U.S. actually did more to rebuild the Japanese economy after World War II than we did to rebuild the economy of the South.
And look at Japan now. Oh,
but
yeah,
Jen... No, go ahead, Jenny.
I had nothing to say.
Maya,
okay.
If you want to jump in, you could come in and throw
the link's in our group, Maya. I'm pretty sure you're in the group, so yeah.
But what I was gonna say,
it's good to just listen.
Jen, I think the biggest issue with what you were suggesting, as far as, you know, have more scholarships for, you know, black students to try to help them succeed, that's not really going to work, because one of the core issues is the way that education is funded in our country. The only money for education comes from property taxes, meaning the poorer neighborhoods where these communities of color have been essentially segregated into due to practices of redlining, and even though they're technically illegal today, they do still happen. It leads to communities that have very low property values, thus very little in taxes going to the schools. So they don't even get they don't get the same primary education as somebody from a wealthier white neighborhood, you know, or predominantly white neighborhood does. So even if you gave them that scholarship, they might not have the foundation to be able to put it to use.
And
I think it's the entire
double standard of
infrastructure.
education in that case, because you've got this thing where the haves still get to have and the have-nots don't get. And that's a problem in your education system, where your education system needs redesigning. You want something more like we've got, where schools get paid by the number of students, not by the amount of property tax that's paid in an area. So the money gets distributed across all the schools based on how many students a school has.
Yeah, and that's theoretically how it's supposed to work here, but that's not the way it's carried out at all.
And I think if you want to go back to double standards, that's one of the biggest problems in this country, is that we have a hooray for me and F you attitude.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm one of those people who came from privilege, and it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I see a lot of people that have extreme privilege. They would not be able to handle living in Los Angeles or living in a place like San Jose, where it's completely socioeconomically different than Los Angeles. You know, I don't know. We've really put ourselves in a corner in this country, and it's not just about race, because that's a distraction story. You know, it's about everything. The entire infrastructure is like kind of falling apart. Jenny?
Schools have always been paid for based on the number of people and the wealth of that group of people, since public schools were invented in this country. We're not going to be able to get away from that until we, once again, make our country realize that this whole concept of the harder you work, the more you get, and pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. And you know, if you really want to work hard to succeed, you have to work hard enough to do it, and realize that the system is mostly designed against us. and that until we legitimately change the system from the ground up, we're never going to be able to accomplish these things that we want. Now, what are reparations going to do?
I don't. Yeah, but Jenny, you're not in the affected party, so you can ask the questions all day long. But I think that this is a subject that's gonna end terribly, and we're standing in front of the trash fire. We shouldn't jump into it because I'm telling you, this is a heated topic, and I'm someone who would be directly affected. Because there's people spouting about reparations that I don't think that would be mathematically out of it, because they don't have direct descendants. So it's that is like a 3-hour conversation.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of where I was going to start directing it, but you did it for me.
And as someone who does have direct descendants, I've heard people speaking for me recently, and I'm like, oh, you have no idea what you're talking about. So I think it's something where we should get all sides so we can scream at each other and find a consensus. Because and I think that's the problem in general, is that no one's really willing to have honest conversations, because things that are going to be said are going to hurt each other's feelings, but there has to be a consensus meant at the end.
Yeah.
You know?
That's where I think reparations, where you're just giving money to an individual, is just ridiculous. Spending money where it will help for a community or for education for individuals makes way more sense, because then you're helping the future, you're not dwelling in the past. And that's the whole point. When you want to change stuff, you look to the future. You don't dwell on the past. You educate about the past, but you don't dwell on it. You don't just keep going back to that. You learn the lessons from it, and you move fucking forward.
Well, and if you're going to go, I'm on the other extreme of that. If you're talking about who's descended from who, I didn't even have any ancestors in this country until after 1900. You know, it was all over before any member of my family set foot on this continent. But still, as a society, we still need to address the problem.
And like I said, it always turns into a heated debate. How did people treat Windrush in your country, dog? To completely put it to a different continent that handled it terribly as well.
Well, to be fair, a lot of people didn't even know who he was. It's only people who I've come across him because through Twitter.
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the Windrush scandal.
Oh, Windrush! I just got Rush. Yeah, we don't really care. We don't really give a shit. Well, going back slightly, Jen is correct. All this needs to go back to education at an early age. You know, children aren't racist, and tearing down those labels, because these minorities are not after anything. They just want equality.
This is one aspect where the conservatives have it right.
And my point is, reparations are not going to achieve that. We have to achieve that on our own.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's easy to say when everything is against you. When I have money, when I go out in public, people damn near have to prove it to people half the time. You know, when I go places, I have to make reservations because I don't sound how I look. I've walked into places, they're like, "Oh, we don't have any rooms for you." I'm like, "Good, because I called 3 hours ago. Here's my card." Every time I walk out of the house, someone asks me what race I am.
What I'm saying, Will, is that reparations are going to change that. We need to change that before reparations are going to have any effect whatsoever.
I think that depends on how you label reparations. I think you can still have something called reparations where the reparations... I mean, Maya has said in the chat, it's not about giving people checks, and she's actually got quite upset in there. So I'm sorry, Maya, if we're treading on a ground that is upsetting for you. But I think we're discussing where the point of reparations is, and I think the real point of reparations, and I think this is the same point Jenny's trying to make, is that it should be targeted to, if there's reparations overall, if they're targeted towards helping groups rather than throwing cash at people, which is exactly what you're saying too, Maya. It's just that we're a lot of people don't think that. People think
No,
reparations
no.
is about throwing
Let
cash
me
at people.
encapsulate what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say, not to have somebody else do it for me. I believe in reparations. I think that they should occur. I don't know how they should be structured, but they should happen. We must do something to say we fucked up. But until we get rid of this bastard method of thinking of hating everybody other than your white ass in the suburbs, reparations are not going to make any effect for the people who are going to get them.
Yeah, because they'll move away from those people.
Because that bigotry is still going to be there.
No,
And
they will get in their
walls that
cars.
stand in front of this person
It'll be the great migration all over again. They'll get in their cars and go move somewhere else. You see, that's the problem in America. We are already segregated based on socioeconomic situations. Like the average person just couldn't walk up in my neighborhood, you know. So we're already segregated.
In the sense, society's
and that's another lie that we tell ourselves, that we're walking around holding hands. We segregate ourselves depending on what state we live, who we are, who we want to be around, what you look like. You know, we had a neighbor who was sketchy. We ran him out of the neighborhood because they were just a little bit sketchy. You know, people. We're not as open-minded as we think we are, especially in America. And that goes back to the double standard, because we believe that 1950s John Wayne propaganda crap that America is this gun-toting amazing place. It's not. It never has been. If you want to talk about personal responsibility, then we should take personal responsibility.
Yeah.
But blaming each other and saying, oh, reparations will do this or that isn't going to help. Because that just throws more fuel on the fire. Because these are old arguments that we've been having over and over and over. If you want to move to the future, then let's move to the future.
Can I ask a question about how these things work in the US? Because are there actual programs in the US that are government funded, designed to help people of lower socioeconomic means, and especially to help like black communities and stuff like that? Is there programs like that? Does the government actually get out there and do that, or is this done mostly by private charities?
Well,
no, there are some governmental things. Yes,
I work
although
with a private
many
charity.
of the governmental things did wind up getting phased out in the 90s and early 2000s.
Well,
Because a lot of
Reagan.
people had the idea that, okay, we've done enough now, we don't need to keep funding these programs.
That's my problem with it. If you haven't got people up to a level where you're making people actually in outcomes, in normal living outcomes. I'm not saying everybody has to end up wealthy and rich, but people should at least have a basic level where there's a level of being above the poverty line, everybody being able to afford to live in a house or a flat or whatever, and have food on their table. If you have not achieved that, you cannot stop supporting those people who can't get there. That should be a government requirement.
All assistance in the United States is designed to help the person up to the point of poverty level plus $1. That's it. And
no, it doesn't, because it cuts off.
Right.
Doesn't it?
Nobody can succeed on that.
You're either destitute and you get all the help you need, or you make so much as $1 over the poverty level, and you're fucked. You get nothing.
You lose everything.
Well, because the problem is that our system of welfare was never designed to get people to be self-sufficient. It was designed with the intention of supporting widows with children until they could remarry.
Yes. See, whereas if I compare what I see is happening in your country to what happens in my country, where anyone who's unemployed gets unemployment benefit, and they can be they have requirements to maintain that, but they could be on that for their entire life if they can never get a job. And that's fine. There is a little bit of social stigma attached to that for people, but it's minor in my country. And there's the aspect of for communities like Aboriginal communities and stuff like that. The government has lots of programs and lots of money given to Aboriginal communities. Less at the moment because we have a conservative government. More when you have a more liberal government like that. Labor government. Why is our Conservative Party called the Liberal Party? It's stupid. But there is deliberate money put aside to help these communities, and it's pushed into these communities to try and help them. The degree of help they get is very dependent on which party's in power at the time, but it's there. The programs are run there. They are government funded, and the idea is to make amends for what happened in the past without just throwing individual money at people. That they have the same basic support thing that everybody else gets. Like if you're unemployed, you get unemployment benefits, and everyone, whether you're white or Aboriginal, gets that. It doesn't matter where you come from. But on top of that, these communities that are impoverished, I mean, it's different if you live in the city. You still get some help if you're part of those communities, but if you live out in the sticks, you'll get more because it's harder for people in those areas. So there's money put in to try to help these communities and make things better. I'm not saying it's perfect in my country. It's far from it. It's fucked up in many cases, especially when you attach to how regional police forces work, which in some cases is just as bad as some of your crap. The city ones aren't as bad, but the regional ones can be really racist and have major issues. But on the whole, we try to put the money where it's needed to help the communities. And our country got up and said fucking sorry. We said, shit, we fucked up. We did this badly. And as a nation, we said sorry to the Aboriginal communities for what happened. And I see that as something different to what has happened in the US, where there hasn't been a sorry. There's been a tendency to brush it under the carpet as much as possible and not talk about it. In some states, even denying that shit happened. I mean, Texas trying to rewrite their books, their history books, to say that slavery didn't happen. Fuck off with that. Just go fuck off, because people need to know what happened in the past to make sure it doesn't repeat in the future.
Well, and Texas is actually a big part of it, because all of the textbooks distributed in the U.S., they have to write them at a level that they will be approved for use in Texas, because it is such a big part of the market that any publisher who writes a book that doesn't get sold in Texas isn't going to make a reasonable profit.
I'm going to read out what Maya put in. She said that's awesome about how Australia does it. While Australians are putting those policies in place, American lawmakers turn a blind eye while white people burn down successful black businesses. I don't know if that's true. Most of our policies didn't come into place until the late 60s, early 70s, and then built up through the 80s and 90s. So I would hazard a guess that most of the business burning downs probably happened in a time when Australia were just as bad as the US. I mean, we have a stolen generation who are still alive, who were taken from their families and put in Catholic orphanages or dished out to white people to turn the Aboriginal people white. Because that was their plan. Make them think like white people and lose their culture. That was their entire plan to do to these Aboriginal people. And the other side of that is the genetic makeup that makes Aboriginal people look black compared to African Americans who gene makeup is recessive for the Australian Aboriginal. So as they bred in successive generations, they start looking more and more white. So it was a deliberate idea to slowly breed the Aboriginals out of existence in Australia. And that was the policy. Rather than slavery or whatever else, it was make it hard for them to live, take their children away, and then make them white. It was called the White Australia policy, and it was fucked up. It was fucked up to its extreme.
Native American.
I think that goes back to double standards. We've learned to turn a blind eye to atrocity. To say, oh, this happened in history, but and then when it literally is happening again, like right now in China, in parts of Africa, people are being murdered by hundreds of thousands, and we're just kind of like, oh, it just kind of happens there, Even in this country, we're kind of accept what happens to people when they get shot.
I think every country is guilty of that, Will. Every country on this planet is guilty of a dark past and nonsense. It's always going to be progression, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's moving on. Some countries find that a lot harder. They don't want to move on, especially like you got too much of a far right movement in America. We have a far right movement here, but it's tiny compared to America. A far right movement. You're labeling like the Klan and these white supremacists as terrorists, and still nothing's being done about your terrorists, your domestic terrorists.
Yeah.
The FBI numbers of what they've caught over the sedition and insurrection is laughable. I mean, I think Jenny could probably clarify the numbers. It's something like 250 out of thousands, which I find it laughable anyway.
Yeah.
But all that needs to be, you got to forget about the past and think about the future. Like Will said, it's all about the future.
Yes.
I get trashed because I'm one of those people who thinks that we should move on, but there are many discussions to be had.
I agree.
But the problem is I was raised by someone who constantly told me, don't be racist, be progressive, go out and get something for yourself. So I have that instilled in me. So when I hear the exact opposite, I'm kind of like, but I'm one of those people who's open-minded and I'm willing to hear all sides and, have a discussion about it.
But in order to move forward, there first has to be an acknowledgement that this was fucked up. We've got to make sure it doesn't keep happening.
I agree.
And the U.S., by and large, has not done that.
100%. And they actually make money off of dividing us.
Yeah.
Even, and there's certain companies that will take a culture and then sell it back to that culture. Anything that, in America, if something becomes popular, all of a sudden it's packaged and sold back to you. I think it makes more money when we're divided.
Well, unless there's an Independence Day style alien attack where the whole world is united, there's never going to be a perfect utopia, as far as I agree
with you.
Honestly, I think if aliens attacked the way the U.S. is so divided as compared to the rest of the world, I think we'd be screwed because the U.S. would be too busy fighting amongst ourselves to properly join forces with the rest of the world to, get the fucking aliens.
To be honest, we probably wouldn't be as messed. We could probably hold off an alien attack, but we'd hurt ourselves in the process, because the best weapons we have are nuclear weapons. They're going to be as powerful as anything aliens have. We could certainly shoot them and do them damage, but we're going to hurt ourselves in the process. And that's the thing. An alien attack would just not be good for us in any way, shape, or form. Wouldn't be good for them either. I don't see any aliens wanting to come here without as violent a species as we are actually wanting to attack us.
There are jokes about aliens flying through our galaxy, seeing Earth and locking their doors, kind of like how when you drive through a rough area.
But they'll never attack because they know we've got Donald Trump's Space Force on patrol around the planet, ready to go, lock and loaded.
There's the aspect of that. I mean, why?
I can't believe that hasn't been done away with, because that's just idiotic.
I mean, what resources are there on Earth that aren't more easily gettable from other locations that don't have sentient beings on them? And that's the point. If you're going to go to a planet that's got sentient beings which have some decent amount of technologies that could possibly defend themselves, and you're going to take losses, why don't you just go to a planet that just doesn't have a sentient race on it and nickel their resources? Or just mine asteroid fields, or mine something else, because it actually makes more sense.
There's a sadistic aspect to it. Oh, just go to a planet where there's no sentient beings and take their resources, sure, but it wouldn't be any fun because you're not depriving somebody of something.
Okay, then you have to be a species that is worse than us in a sense, because quite frankly, even though we're quite bad and quite aggressive, we probably wouldn't try to take a planet from a species that was close to our level of technology, or definitely not higher than our level of technology, because we're not completely stupid. We'd rather look for places that are easy for us to get the stuff from. So you have to be particularly nasty to go, hey, that planet's got people on it. Let's invade, take it over, and enslave them. At that point, you actually have to be moralistically lower than us, which, I think a species like that actually probably isn't going to get very far into space. I mean, we've come so close to killing ourselves. A species like that's going to be more aggressive than we are, and probably wouldn't get to that point.
What is it? there's I forget the name of it, but it's basically a paradox where like at a certain point a species, you know, once they get technology and they've got sentience, they've got technology, they end up literally destroying themselves before they can reach space
It's
flight.
one of the great filters. Like, why aren't there other intelligent species out
Neil
in
deGrasse
space?
Tyson
And
actually talks about that all the time.
Yeah,
and he says it's a miracle that we haven't wiped each other out yet.
Because there comes a point where you've got technology that's better than your moralistic capabilities of handling that technology, and that is exactly where we are. We are struggling to come up with the moral guidelines for the technologies we have. And we haven't achieved that. We have to achieve that as a planet, an entire planet, to make sure we get there. And we have definitely not achieved that. There are countries that if they had nukes would use them now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look how close we came just in the 60s and 70s through the Cold War.
Or in the last 5 years with Trump and North Korea.
Most powerful, the most powerful nations on the planet had the doctrine of mutually assured destruction. That if anybody launches one missile, we're going to make sure the entire planet is wiped out.
And that is why nuclear war and conflict is pretty much off the table for all these warring nations, or potentially warring nations like us and Russia and China. However, the new front in military conflict is the ether, the cybercrime.
Yeah.
Every country out there is working their ass off to find out how to hack into each other's system.
And that's because we still haven't learned. We don't want to wipe ourselves out as a species, but we still haven't learned how to actually get along and be nice to each other.
Yeah, pretty much.
Part of that is, I mean, there's struggle over resources. That's what most conflicts start from. But really, like, the main resources on the planet are fuel to fuel our technology. So if we could come up with a sustainable, easy to manufacture way to produce that energy, that takes one thing off the table. Well, water wars are going to end up happening with the droughts that we're having. You know, water and food are going to be high demand resources because we need those to live. So we'd have to find a way to deal with those issues. And then you have culture and religion keeping people apart and keeping them fighting each other. I think that those are kind of like the three. It's, you know, I guess, you know, water and food would also kind of be grouped in with energy, because not every area, not every civilization or group of people has need for electricity. You know, there are lots of areas still left in the world where they don't have electricity at all, and they get along just fine. So for those, it would be food and water.
What you're talking about is becoming a post-scarcity society. So where we go from having a shortfall of stuff to supply everybody on the planet to becoming one that's got an abundance. And that is entirely tied to energy. That energy is the one thing that we cannot at the moment produce for an excess. We technically can produce an excess of food for the population that the world has. We don't do that because of economic reasons. Like, we throw so much food in the bin in the West that we could feed the rest of the fucking world if we managed there's enough food to feed everybody. There actually is. It's a problem of money. Sorry, go Will.
That's how Godless Sewing got started. Was that I work with an organization that we saw like all these clothes that were being thrown away. We were like, hey, let's give them to homeless people and people that can't afford to send their kids to school with clothes. You know, so we are wasteful in the West beyond what. Even right now, there are just bales of clothes that are unclaimed that are probably going to get incinerated or sold to secondhand stores. That, you know, we're wasteful. We are wasteful.
So we can feed and clothe the world.
Not to mention how bad fast fashion is for the environment.
Exactly, and that's why I always put recycle, reuse, reduce in whenever I tweet, because that's the whole point of what I do is just. You know, just in the things that I do, I'm bringing my carbon footprint down as much as I possibly can. Sorry to jump in.
But you've also got like the restaurants and the bakers and the donut shops that throw so much out. when there's and there's nothing they can do about it. They can't give it away because if someone gets ill, they're going to get sued. They know it.
Yeah.
So they have to legally just throw it away.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the litigation in the U.S. has become a big blocker to that.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
Yeah, I mean,
many companies have gone to the point.
OBS disconnected for some reason. Might be a YouTube problem.
Oh, no, we're back.
We're back? Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Sorry about that, people.
Yeah, we are.
Hey, can I change the subject for just a moment?
Please.
Please.
Fucking Mars rover. How fucking cool
isn't that awesome?
That's a positive thing to talk about.
We've got a goddamn helicopter on Mars. It's just a little one, but it's a step. It's amazing.
It is.
I was telling everyone my name's up on that microchip. My name is now on Mars, and when I looked at my ticket again, it's for a launch in 2026.
Oh.
So I was a bit deflated.
That's all right. That's all right. You'll get there.
I may be dead by then.
We have 3 missions there at the moment, which is absolutely amazing. And it's not unusual for all these missions to arrive at the same time because we have to... There's like a 4-month launch window to get the shortest launch time between Earth and Mars that takes the least amount of fuel and is the safest route. And it only comes by every 2 years. So all the missions that happen each 2 years get launched in that same period of time. So all the spacecraft arrive at the same time. Doesn't matter which country does it. They're all stuck with the same launch windows. Going back to Kitty's post-scarcity with that... sorry, Peps?
Oh, just saying with the Mars missions, the other thing we're having with overlap is that the rovers have been actually surviving much longer than they expected.
Way.
That we're getting years more data from them than they had planned on.
Yeah, we built this thing for 6 months of operation, and here it is 12 years, 15 years later, still working.
Yeah.
But I mean, even our early probes, like Voyager... The Voyager probes are amazing for how long they continued to run for.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can do that on spacecraft, why can't we build cars that can drive for more than 10 years?
Well, you probably could, but your car would probably cost you a couple of $1 million.
Do you know what's going to happen when the first humans get to Mars? We're going to go pick up all of our trash that we've been throwing there since the 70s.
Yeah.
Don't bet on it.
It's about capitalism. It's, there's a lot of planned obsolescence. And a lot of things with cars are that people don't drive them until they break down. Yeah. The companies convince them that you've got to have the newer, better one, that you can't be seen in a car that's 5 years old. That's embarrassing.
We also do it with computers as well. Could you imagine how much waste we would reduce if we didn't have to change our computer every 5 or 6 years?
Yeah.
The cell phones are the worst of that. They've actually gotten on the cycle that most people don't even keep them a year. Most people are upgrading their cell phone every 9 months.
Yeah,
this is it.
In the US, anyway.
A lot of that is batteries, especially nowadays that you've got cell phones that the batteries are built into, so they're really hard to change. So by the time the battery starts fucking up, which lithium ions always do, you have to replace... It works out more cost effective to replace your phone than replacing the battery. We need to move away from lithium ions. We need to move away from lithium ions. Saline-based batteries.
Lithium ion, there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to take off a panel and put a new battery in it.
Yes, but even so, lithium ions are incredibly bad for the planet.
As soon as you do that, though, you've introduced mechanical couplers and latches and hinges and clips and things, and you've made them thicker. And people want the thinnest.
Not only that, as soon as you start making a phone that you can take apart, it's impossible to make it waterproof. And that was one of the requirements people wanted. They wanted waterproof phones. So this is why
haven't made one yet.
This is why that's happened that way. However,
so true, Purple. So true.
If we move away from lithium-ion batteries and towards salt-based ones, which is possible, there's a lot more sodium in there because you can have sodium-based batteries. If you move towards that, there's a lot more sodium than there is lithium. Sodium's energy density is only slightly less than that of the lithium-ion batteries. They're a little bit heavier, but fuck, you can put up with that, people, because sodium batteries don't explode when they break cells, and they're not as dangerous for the environment because you can pull them apart and reconstitute the innards, and it doesn't create toxic waste. And it doesn't create toxic waste making them in the first place, which is the biggest problem with mining lithium. Is a pain in the ass and very bad for our environment. We need to stop having lithium batteries.
All batteries have huge
Well,
lithium are particularly bad because how you have to mine lithium.
Well, I remember reading about lithium batteries, and someone may have to correct me on this. And the graphite that's used in them that propagates the power, they're changing the structure of that to make it more flexible because it goes very brittle very quick, and that's why they run out of power. And they make them more useful or longer lasting, let's say.
Yeah, but you can apply exactly the same technologies they're putting into lithium ions to make them better, to make the sodium-based batteries better.
Okay, so I had to
sodium
look it up.
isn't
Sorry.
as toxic and doesn't catch fucking fire. That's the point. You don't get swirled batteries either, like you do with lithium ions, which is also dangerous. So I know you get slightly better energy densities on the lithium ions, but you could still have phones that run for hours. And with our modern charging techniques, you can charge in place. And, you can make up for the fact that the batteries aren't quite as powerful. But they're way better for the environment overall. So, yeah, I'd rather we start moving that way.
I wish they made sodium batteries for these, because the only option I have is lithium-ion batteries. But then again, right now for cell phones is the same thing.
They don't mass produce the sodium batteries for anything at the moment because most people don't want them in their products because sodium's heavier than lithium. Lithium's a very light element, so people don't want to use the sodium batteries because your phone ends up heavier and your other things end up heavier because your battery is heavier. And my brain's going, fuck that. Just be a bit stronger and hold the bloody phone up. Maybe you'll be on your phone for less if it's a bit heavier. Screw you all. We're better for the environment if we go to sodium-based batteries.
Okay, how many people... Sorry, I was just going to ask, how many people actually still hold their phones up? Like, who doesn't use a Bluetooth
hands-free
headset or a wired headset?
Or go your
I have a
hands-free.
giant face, so I can't put my... I have a giant face, so I can't put a cell phone like that.
Yeah, I still hold mine up.
I refuse to use a headset. I don't know why, but just I think the reason I won't do it though is because I had too many encounters when I was younger, walking through the supermarket and thinking people were talking to themselves like lunatics, and it turned out they had a Bluetooth in.
Okay, so there is a town, in Zambia. I wanted to get my facts right, where they have a zinc mine, and we send all of our old computers and cell phones there. I mean, they have old IBMs there. They have old, like the Zach Morris cell phones there.
What?
Their life expectancy is 35. So people in that town, they only live to be 35, but they get these massive contracts, so they accept all of our trash, anything that's a computer. So in the West, our trash goes to one of, I think it's 10 different places in Africa where people aren't expected to live past 35.
Well, one of the reasons for that is because what they're doing with those computers is extracting the various metals that are practical in terms of cost to recover versus value on the market, and that's what's killing them is the processes for recycling, not the fact that they have these computers on the scene.
I agree.
What they're doing with the chemistry to recycle.
But that's our trash. That's our trash.
Is just deadly.
If you live in the West and you can understand what I'm saying, that's our trash. That goes there.
And that's a double standard, isn't it? I mean, because we're quite happy in the West to send our trash to the fucking third world and not have to deal with it ourselves. So it's our trash. We should figure it out and deal with it ourselves. Don't send it.
And the thing that makes it financially viable for them is that they don't have the environmental safeguards, the regulations. So they're doing things that are poisoning their environment, and we're sending it over there because we know that to do this in any economically feasible way, we would destroy our environment, and we won't let that happen in our own yard.
Yeah, it's the not in my backyard thing. It's like, oh yeah, fracking, it's totally fine until they go to build a fracking site near a rich white person neighborhood, and then all of a sudden it's the end of the fucking world.
And yet,
But
what we
it's an
should be
indigenous
doing
To
is
the poor
thinking,
black neighborhood.
our neighborhood
Or an
doesn't end
indigenous
at our
neighborhood.
country boundary. Our neighborhood ends somewhere up in space where we've got junk up there. Anywhere
Well-
humans have been is where our fucking neighborhood ends. So take responsibility for the whole fucking lot.
Well, I think most people are just make themselves ignorant to the crap that goes on around the planet. They like to put their rubbish bins out of once a week, and they don't care as long as it's empty. They don't care where it's going.
Actually, oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
And I'm with the fracking as well. You were saying they're ignorant of that, of how environmentally bad that process is. Causes it's banned here. It causes a couple of earthquakes, and the pollution, the environmental pollution it causes is terrible. But anything for a little bit of gas, who cares about the planet?
Ah, exactly.
My son's father, my partner, he actually used to work for the EPA, and he had to go out and do routine water sampling, and he noticed that the toxin levels were off the fucking charts. So he follows the stream back up to where it originated, and he found an illegal dumping ground. It happened to be on this one gentleman's property, so he went and got the sheriff, as was protocol, to go knock on the guy's door and explain, hey, this is an illegal dumping ground. We'll pay to clean it all up. You just need to allow access to the site, and then you cannot dump there because it's poisoning the water supply. And he met them with a shotgun, and it was a whole ordeal. Well, fast forward, he ended up in court. The EPA took the man to court, and he had gotten all of his neighbors riled up of, it's my property, it's my land, I can do what I want with it. And all of the neighbors were on his side during the court proceedings. But then as the evidence is coming out that, oh yeah, this is poisoning you and your children because it is literally getting into your drinking water, then they were like, no, and they all stopped supporting him, and he ended up having to pay almost $1 million, or he got assigned almost $1 million in fines and legal costs and everything like that, when the EPA literally said, we'll clean it up for free, but you cannot do this again. And he lost all of his friends, which I'm not sad about, because fuck that guy.
Well, karma. Karma's a bitch.
And it wasn't really that guy because, like you say, initially the community supported him. So again, it was an education thing that these people weren't understanding the impact this was having on their own community.
Yeah, they were like, oh, government overreach, the libtard, EPA is reaching and telling us what we can and cannot do with our own property. Ooh. That's literally how he spun it to them, and they bought it hook, line, and sinker until they realized it was poisoning them and their children. And ultimately, I mean, going back to dying and life expectancy, a new study just came out, a new thing just came out that our average life expectancy here has dropped by the most since World War II. Just this year, we are going to die sooner.
We lost 1 year of life expectancy in the first 6 months of 2020, and it's due to COVID.
Yeah.
I saw a BBC
What is our
documentary.
actual life expectancy now? How long are we Americans even
It
expecting?
depends. It depends on where you live. I saw a BBC documentary. In Missouri, the average male is not living past 45, and that's more about heart disease and less about violence.
I think average male in America was 76. I heard sometime last year, I think. And the average woman was 82, something like that.
Yeah, and the average lifespan in the U.S. has been gradually going down since 2000.
Yeah.
And if
I
you want to
mean-
know why, there's this one
Thanks,
website
Bush.
called Why Men or Why Women Outlive Men that has a lot of graphic representation of why.
I've seen those on Twitter.
I think that as part of that life expectancy thing comes down to that double standard of healthcare as well.
Yeah.
Because if you had a more generalized healthcare system in the US, which meant that nobody fell below a certain level and was able, a form of universal healthcare, but it wouldn't matter if it didn't cover everything, as long as it covered everything that was life-threatening and stuff like that, then at least that life expectancy would increase and quality of life for people would increase as well.
So I want to comment on something Harmonica Man said. It is all those pork sandwiches, and it's also all those cool cigarettes. I smoked for a long time. Those will kill you.
Hey, here's the thing. I
They'll
mean,
also kill
a
the
lot
people
of it,
around you.
a lot of it does come down to socioeconomic status. Like, the wealthy you are, the longer you're expected to live. Mitch McConnell, turtle fuckhead he is senator of the state of Kentucky. 10 of the 20 poorest cities in the entire country are in Kentucky. He is not serving his citizens, and they are suffering for it. But again, it goes back to education. Yet they voted him in. He won in a landslide, even after all of the shit he pulled. And because they believe talking points and propaganda and sound bites because they weren't taught critical thinking. They weren't taught to check primary sources on things. It literally, Facebook said it, so it must be true. Fox News said it, so it must be true. One America News said it, so it must be true. And
well, that brings up a double standard. I'll let you finish, but that brings up another double standard.
No, I'm just saying, I really think that this country is absolutely doomed unless we actually focus on education, not just to lift up impoverished communities of color and even impoverished white communities. Literally, if you're a poor person of color, you have it the worst. But a poor white person has it better in some ways than a wealthy person of color, and in other ways not. There are, with the systemic racism, there are things where it's better, but a wealthy black person does have a higher life expectancy than a really poor white person, again, because of access to healthcare and higher education. And so, I mean, it's a big tangled messy web, but I think the best thing we can do to lift everybody up out of poverty and get leadership elected that actually has the people's best interests at heart is to invest in infrastructure and education, because those are things that impact people in their everyday lives. If they have lead in their water, then that's doing brain damage to the children, and no amount of education funding is going to fix that. So we really need to focus on both of those issues. Our infrastructure gets a grade of D+. It's crumbling. The country's falling apart. And our education system is one of, if not the worst in the developed world as far as public education goes. So we're fucked both ways. And it really shows with the type of leadership we keep getting that is continually going to keep fucking us in the same ways, because they want a stupid electorate. They want the people stupid so that they can get them with catchy talking points and sound bites, because they want to keep getting reelected. They want to maintain their power, and they know, especially the Republicans, that an educated populace, an educated electorate does not vote for them, period. Except for maybe the really wealthy, because they want tax cuts. But the poor people, like the unwashed plebs, they outnumber those wealthy people 10-1. So they can continue to vote for the people that want to fuck us all. Go for it. If everybody else is voting, on the right side of history, then their voice isn't going to matter anymore, as it should be.
Well, there's let's put it this way. There's a reason that back in the 1800s, in the UK, that there was a reason that it was the Conservatives who opposed public libraries, and they literally said for that reason we don't want the working classes getting to them in too educated. They might start thinking they can run society better than we can.
Ooh, one more thing.
actually said this.
The Electoral College has to go. That was a bargain with slave states, and that is what is helping keep the Republicans in power. Maybe not on state legislatures, because that is going back to infrastructure, education. But as far as like national, like presidential elections, that is the Electoral College is why we've had Republicans win the presidency without winning the popular vote.
I agree with you. And while we're chucking things in the bin, let's get rid of daylight savings time too.
Oh,
I'm not a
please.
farmer. I'm not a farmer. And it gets confusing because California and Arizona, certain times of the year, where they're an hour ahead or an hour behind. Sorry.
There's an aspect that
And it
goes with what you were
complicates things
talking.
when Arizona doesn't do daylight savings, but the rest of us do.
You want confusion? Where I was living in Michigan, Michigan did not change the clocks. Wisconsin did. Except the 5 Michigan counties that border on Wisconsin stayed on Wisconsin time. So half the year I was on a different time from the rest of the state I was in.
Oh,
Well,
that's
that's because those
ridiculous.
counties actually had people living in them.
Okay, that is confusing.
An aspect that goes with what Kitty was talking about is that there seems to be a thing where conservatives has convinced a whole heap of people that taxation is bad and government helping you out is bad. And I don't know how they ever managed to do this. You know, it's like that they've convinced them that we should be reducing taxation and we shouldn't be helping you out anymore because that's actually what the rich people want. But they've convinced
Except
people who
the
are
reddest of the red states are the places where more federal government dollars are consumed than anywhere else.
yeah.
The way they were able to do that was twofold. One, give people the hope that we still have upward mobility in this country, and they too might one day be rich and have an estate, and so they don't want an estate tax because that would take from that. They don't want higher taxes on the wealthy because that wealth will trickle down to them. Then they're going to be wealthy, and they don't want to pay extra taxes.
Yeah.
The other side of that is racism and xenophobia with Reagan's whole welfare queen trope of, oh, you just have black women shitting out babies and collecting government checks, and we don't want to be like that.
Yes, that was pushed in Australia for a long time, where everyone on the dole is a dole bludger, and they don't want to work; they just want to take money away from you. That attitude in Australia has changed somewhat over the last 10 to 15 years, where it's become more a case of people understand that most people on unemployment benefits aren't there by choice.
And that imagery was created by the Reagan campaigns for the Reagan administration in the presidential races. But the trickle-down theory of economics was not invented by the Reagan administration. The trickle-down theory was used back in the elections, turn of the century kind of stuff, 1905, 06, 07, 08, that kind of stuff, where that's exactly what they said, is that if you give the money and stuff to us, it'll trickle down to you folks on the bottom, and people bought it.
Yeah, and trickle-down economics does not work. It has never worked. It will never work because you give the rich more money. What they do is they put it in the bank and they make more money with it for themselves. They don't have to spend it.
They make sure it's like offshore, like a tax haven.
Yeah.
Because after all, God forbid they pay any goddamn taxes.
Trickle-down economics.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, so trickle-down economics work, is about as effective as the prosperity gospel. It's the same goddamn thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, Australia at least has proved every time we've had a global problem which we knew was going to hit from an economic standpoint, we've proved that trickle up does work. Because back when we had the stock market issues in the mid-2000s, Australia's response to that was to give a tax break to all Australians. Regardless of your socio-economical level, everyone, if you're a taxpayer, you're going to get this extra tax break in the form of money that's paid to you by the taxation department. And the thing about that was all lower income earners ended up spending it. You had to spend it anyway. You got this tax check, but you actually had to spend it. You couldn't keep it in your bank account. It didn't matter how wealthy you were. You couldn't keep it. It was money that you had to spend. It was, it wasn't paid to your bank account. It was sent out as a voucher. So it went to help it went back into businesses because everyone had to spend it. But people got what they wanted, what they needed, and the money circulated back into the economy. This time around with COVID, everybody who was low income, as in either low income in a job or low income as in being unemployed, got a boost in income from the government during COVID to help stimulate the economy, and that worked. Now, if you know it works in this cases where you have to stimulate the economy, how is it that you can then say that no, it doesn't work and we have to use trickle-down economy? It's because you're a lying sack of shit. And you realise that trickle-down doesn't work, but you're wanting to fill your own pockets and those of your big wealthy mates.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I think we've got to get rid of this notion of is that it's the rich people that actually create the fucking wealth. That is absolutely the biggest lie on earth.
I agree. Well, going on about the American divide, that's also split another 50 ways, isn't it? Or 51 if you count Russia, through states who have their own rules and regs, and then instead of one law fits all, you know, say some of them have the death penalty, some of them don't, and they're basically getting away with their own rules and regs and creating their own economies within the state, which I find ludicrous, to be fair. But hopefully Biden will stamp that out and make it all, you know, one united America.
I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. That won't happen anytime soon.
Oh no, have the states like we have our counties, don't we, Jeff?
Yeah.
Have the states.
That's an awful lot of history you're getting into there. So
of course.
Well, and states' rights is something they use for a popular battle cry.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Well, because you guys were talking the Civil War earlier, and I mean, and there was that, you know, there's something that is actually somewhat true, is that a lot of occupants of states, they had a loyalty to their state more than they would to say the like the federal government. That they viewed, like, a lot of people did view their state as their country.
There's certain people that still act like that.
Yeah, and it's still because it was sort of having the idea that, you know, these, you know, it's like this idea of, you know, it was. I think it's a similar attitude to what, you know, we've got towards something like the European Union, that we were all, you know, we're all different nation states, but we were in this big federal sort of alliance, which is the, you know, European Union. That's kind of a similar view to what I think a lot of Americans had of the United States was in the early days. So.
But America has some great things going for it. The healthcare system. I was in New York, in Brooklyn, working on in 2019 in December, and on the 16th of December, I had a stress-related subarachnoid bleed, which gave me a full-blown stroke. And I was treated like a king there. It was amazing. I had a lot of people praying for me, which I sort of raised one eyebrow worked. But they managed to get me, you know, sort of walking through memory muscle. And compared to the British healthcare system, which people say, oh, you've got free healthcare, it's not all that. We have waiting lists, and it's far inferior. And I've not had any rehab for months now, which I'm sure if I was in America, still in America.
It depends on your insurance, you know, and where you're from.
Yeah, I don't know
what your job is, I guess.
Well, I don't know what insurance my company paid for.
I mean, American healthcare is wonderful if you can afford it.
Yeah, you have to do a wallet biopsy before treatment.
That is exactly what it is. And, you know, the funny thing is, my dad lived 3 years longer than he should have. It's because he had great insurance. And he had an actual breathing machine that they have at the hospital. He was able to bring that home because he had great insurance. And the average person would be given a bottle and said, hey, you're going to live an extra 6 months. Have a nice life, you know? It's really sad how and ruthless healthcare is in this country. It depends on how much.
Would we stop saying free healthcare? There's no such thing, not even in the countries with socialized medicine.
Well, that's right. That's right. We do pay. I mean, it used to be called stamp in the day. We used to pay. It was called a stamp duty. We used to pay for the national health. I don't know what it's called now. I think it's all just mixed in.
National insurance.
Yeah, national insurance. It's just mixed in.
If you actually look at the original leaflets that were distributed in 1948 about the National Health Service, it states very clearly that it's not a charity, that it will be paid for through a tax called national insurance.
Well, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'm going to bring up something that Klaus has put in the chat about what I was saying about in Australia. There was an exception to that as far as giving money out to the poor and ill-capable in Australia to help them during the things. And that was pensioners. Pensioners got fuck all incentives. They got 2 payments plus another one's coming up of 2 payments of $750, and there's been 2 extra $250 payments. So fuck all compared to the every fortnight extra that everyone else sort of got. What the aside bit that Klaus said about the landlord putting up their rent is an aside, and they shouldn't have been able to do that because I believe there was legislation passed to put a moratorium on rent increases during COVID. So your landlord's a fuckhead, and he should go before the tribunal and get dumped. Yeah,
they did that here, but people are still getting kicked out of their houses here too.
Yeah, no one stopped them doing it. Yes, I see that, but they should have stopped them doing it. You should have been able to complain and got back.
There are exclusions in the moratorium laws that allow landlords to still kick people out for non-rent payment reasons.
Things, yeah. So they'll take advantage in some other ways, and that's an unscrupulous landlord, and there are a fucking lot of them. The landlord rules are not great. But yes, it was harder pushed on people who are pensioners in our country. And in real world terms, the pension in Australia has not increased significantly compared to the cost of living in the last 15 years. That is fucked up. That is
similar to our minimum wage. Our cost of living keeps going up, and our minimum wage federally is still $7.25 an hour.
Well, and also, if you want to talk about pensioners, the American Social Security system, the cost of living on average has run around anywhere between 5 and 14%. And Social Security increases have generally been between 1 and 3%.
Yeah.
If we haven't halted them all together for austerity, as somebody who's on Social Security retirement, if you put my life in a 40-hour week like I used to have, I get paid less than $6.50 an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people trying to live on Social Security are living on like half the minimum wage.
It's crazy here.
And I acquired a new benefit where I don't have to pay as much for Medicare, because you pay for Medicare even when you're on it. And it changed my annual income to the point where now I don't get my $16 a month food stamps.
Yeah. I actually hear about that happen quite a bit. That, and that's the problem with our welfare system in general, is people find anything that gets them a little bit ahead, and the government cuts them back on something. They actually had to, pass special bills in the legislature so that when they did issue stimulus checks, it didn't kick people off of welfare. It didn't kick people off of food stamps because they got a one-time check.
I want to bring up something else that Klaus pointed out. When this happened to Klaus, and Klaus got kicked out of their home because of this rent increase, it shouldn't have happened, and it should have been against the law at the time. So I'd be really interested to know what state you're in, Klaus. There are no shelters for men in that area. This is one area of non-equality that is the opposite way around to how it normally is. The support for men who are in disadvantaged situations is so much less than for women.
Basically, in America, they'll feed you if you're a man and you're homeless. If you find like a drop-in center.
And I find this kind of disgusting in that, Okay. This is perpetuating the myth that all women are weak and fragile and need our support, and men should be big and tough and stand on their own, which is bullshit, because there are situations where men are just as vulnerable as women, and we should be supporting both. We shouldn't just say, oh no, we give all the support to the women. No, there are men who need that support too. So not having any facility to support someone like Klaus when they've been kicked out of their home is just fucked up beyond belief. And I'm ashamed that happened in my country.
You live in a misandrical society, Jen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also the fact that male survivors of domestic violence, like, they face not only stigma, but lack of resources to help them if they need to get out and get back on their feet. And, it's just really shitty.
And they're mocked, too. Like, oh, you must be so weak because a woman abused you. Look at what happened to Johnny Depp. And a lot of times they're made out to be liars.
I think that goes back to we have so many double standards. We don't even, where should we start? When it comes, just pick a category, and we have double standards. When I was trying to do a research, I didn't know where to start, because I was like, let's start with the church. Well, we all know that the church is nothing but double standards and hypocrisy.
Oh, yeah.
Then I was like, let's go to race. And I was like, well, that'll start a fight. But that's double standards and hypocrisy, because depending on what group you're in, there's gatekeeping, there's self-hatred, there's just this giant cycle, So there's double standards in everything. So my question is, how do we find the bridge to not want to choke each other?
well, don't forget, Will, COVID has created a great psychopathy through society at the moment. There's a lot of people who are suicidal and real down on their luck. It all starts off, look out for your neighbours and that. Well, people aren't doing that. You're still getting the ignorant going out there. Oh, I'm oppressed, I have to wear a mask. I shouldn't have to wear a mask. And they got nicknamed the Karens, didn't he? And as long as that psychopathy is still continuing, society will never heal. It needs to heal.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. We have a lot of solutions. There are a lot of viable solutions to a lot of these problems that we've already talked about. One of the big ones would be introducing UBI. Universal Basic Income.
Okay, I was about to ask you in Spanish.
Sorry.
Just to confuse you. I was just about to come in Spanish and ask you, what is UBI?
And I know that anyone who's a conservative is going, well, you could never afford UBI. You couldn't do that. You could, because if you had Universal Basic Income and you stopped people from avoiding taxes by saying, this is how much money you're going to pay the full amount of tax on it regardless. There is no way out of this because your universal basic income is under that. You would be able to, if you properly tax the rich for what they're meant to be paying instead of what they think they should be paying, you would have the money to afford a universal basic income.
What happens in America is that the rich do get taxed, but it's the billionaires and the mega rich that don't get taxed. I paid 9 times more than Donald Trump did in taxes.
But I mean, you look at it realistically. It's also their big companies. Now, those big companies have earned more money in a year than the millions of people in total. So the tax rates that those companies should be paying should be enough to help put in that UBI underneath.
If you look at the state of Nevada, they don't have a state tax because every degenerate such as myself goes there every weekend and basically spends as much money as they can.
The thing obviously that the thing is that that's also a problem that needs to be tackled on a global scale or whatever, because there's the thing like that that's always been the big argument is that if we start taxing the rich, they put their money somewhere else, sort of thing, which is the thing. They've got their tax havens, So it is something that really does need tackling on a more global scale, which is easier said than done, obviously. But
No, I agree with you because it happens in your country and mine as well.
Yeah. we got tax havens that are sort of technically somewhat within the UK. I mean, like Island, like Isle of Man or the Channel Islands, or even Gibraltar. They're kind of tax havens.
Well, I think our problem is that our tax system needs to be linked to our economic system better. That instead of taxing people based on their income or on what they produce, we should be taxing people on what they consume.
Well, that's the idea of a goods and services tax.
Yeah, but it's done in a very sparse, patchy way, and it's really a very small part of the taxes, at least in the U.S.
It's 10% of all of our tax in Australia.
The only problem is those types of taxes tend to be a bit more aggressive, and they tend to hit, poor people like a little bit harder because they're
really
going and like it is a greater proportion of their income that goes into paying those taxes. I think a better way to possibly go about it would be, similar to like, the UN, or maybe as an offshoot of the UN, do like a GTO, a global trade organization, where, there's benefits to, being a member, country in that, and make it so that, you can't, like, as being a member of it, you cannot have, banks that are acting as tax shelters for other countries, where it's basically, the taxes might be different in different countries, but you can't be, contributing to that. So it's like, if the Cayman Islands wanted to be part of it, then they wouldn't allow, the tax shelter, tax havens that they have. I mean, it would be really hard to institute, but I think if we want to survive as a species, we are going to have to go towards a more egalitarian and socially democratic globalist model. Like, we can't be 300 different tribes. Like, in the end, we are one race. And usually I hate when people say that, because it's usually racists that are getting out of that, but we are the human race. We are all that same species, and I don't really see us surviving to even colonize Mars if we can't get our shit together and stop thinking of our neighbor humans as enemies. And one way to do that would be a more globalist economy, where if we can get the energy thing situated, then we could help use, the overproduction of food.
Someone's backstage, Jen, by the way. Let's just say, Jen, someone's... There we are.
We can use, the overproduction of goods in the West, and we can utilize the energy. The reason why we don't send it to other countries to feed those countries that need it is it comes down to logistics and the cost of transporting it. If we could get the energy situation sorted, where we could make, the bread baskets of the world global food producers, so nobody goes hungry. Like,
if you can solve the energy problem, you solve all the problems effectively. Because with enough energy, you can produce a lot of extra food. With enough energy, you can make travel inexpensive. With enough energy, everyone can have proper lighting, can have proper heating. Everyone can build places to live in cheaper. Everything becomes cheaper when you have an abundance of energy. And we could effectively build ourselves an abundance of energy now, even with recyclables. We possibly couldn't do it by building on the planet, but we could build in space and beam energy back to us on the surface.
Like you're saying, that for the most part we produce enough for the entire world. The problem is there isn't a good enough distribution system. If you make transportation of bulk goods cheaper, then you can accomplish that.
I was just thinking transportation is the key. And then capitalism gets in the way too, because it increases prices unnecessarily.
Well, I
I
mean,
mean,
Exactly.
obviously the big scrub of capitalism is that because it has a tendency to towards overproduction, and where I mean, theoretically, it should be a good thing because it can produce an abundance of goods. That is not distributed. That is not distributed evenly, and so that's what you were saying earlier. So much of it gets thrown away because there is the tendency to overproduction. I mean, this is why it's such a messed up system to me. It's the only system I think in the history of humanity that we've invented where people end up starving because there's too much, not because there's not enough, but there's actually too much. That's what's crazy about it.
It goes sorry, it goes back to what I don't know if it was as somebody said how people put locks on dumpsters at restaurants. That's ridiculous. That's insane. Jenny, of course, is Jenny. That's insane.
Yeah, and she's right that even the Super Americas, the gas station quick markets, have locks on the dumpsters just because, like we were saying about the bakeries, at the end of the night, they throw away trays and trays of bread and donuts and so forth, and they don't want anybody picking it out of there.
I'm a dumpster diver. Part of my food supply comes from dumpsters, and that has pretty much had to come to an end because there just isn't anything anymore because of lock and key.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
really
ridiculous.
hoping for an egalitarian, like Star Trek, Federation of Planets, even if we're the only planet. Like, just, I'm hoping, and that wasn't a utopia. Like, let's be honest, the Federation had its issues. However, it was still superior to what we currently have, where, people at least had their basics. They had food, they had shelter, they had health care, like they had education. Like those are the essentials that you need to life.
That won't happen
money.
because of going
money
to space, though.
Exactly.
That will happen because
money.
we achieve post-scarcity. That will happen because we have a breakthrough that either scientifically that gives us that excess energy we need, or we start as a society start saying we've got to invest in an energy infrastructure that can supply our planet well into the future. Once you have that excess of energy, going to space, growing enough food for everybody, building enough habitats, living in space even becomes a possibility. But we do not have an energy surplus now. We have an energy deficit. Maybe not in first world countries, but across the world there is definitely an energy deficit. And that is the problem.
I mean, we definitely I like the idea of, the suborbital flights that are super duper fast. Like if we could, again, comes down to energy, but if we had fuel for those aircraft, they could get food or clothing or medicine produced in one area to the other side of the planet in a matter of hours.
We are having Matt join us
amazing
in
would
a
that
few
be?
minutes. He's grabbing his microphone to hop in, so keep an eye out, Will. So
I will.
you want me to talk about the science of all that, and that's ideal because
For some reason, the crickets, can you hear them? They're extra chirpy.
Oh yeah,
I'm sorry.
Come through loud and clear.
Who did you say is going to be jumping
your
in?
crickets are way more
Matt,
annoying than
not a doctor.
here.
Almost a doctor.
okay.
Almost a doctor.
Will, your crickets are so much more annoying than ours are here because of your temperature. When crickets it's cricket season around here, they chirp at about kind of rhythm, and it's very peaceful. It's very calm.
And
calming,
talking of Matt, here he is.
Enjoy it.
We have a bunch of
This guy
frogs.
is so freaking California.
I live in a
hyper,
swamp.
he needs to be shot.
There is actually a calculation.
Something different here.
There is actually a calculation that you can count the cricket
That's a
chirps
snowy-
and you can calculate the temperature.
So Matt, you wanted to say something to what was happening. Hi and welcome, and hi
That's a
and welcome
snowy
to Randolph,
tree
if I didn't
cricket,
say
Will.
that to before.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Sorry, if
I'm
it gets
also
too
not-
noisy in my background, let me know. I'll turn the mic off. We've got renovations going on.
Oh,
So
okay. That's okay.
Hi,
but hopefully
Randolph.
my mic's good enough that it doesn't pick up too much that far out. But I've already cut the power to my computer once today without warning. So if I disappear, that's probably why. But hello, everyone.
Right. So we were talking about energy production and post-scarcity and how we could get to that if we actually had the political will for it.
Yeah,
we
I
just
heard
finished-
from
we
Dr.
just
Carl,
finished
and
a
I still want to
PhD
find
real
the
fast.
reference for it, that apparently the expected future health costs from air pollution from fossil fuels is meant to be more than the current cost of switching to green energies, to renewable energies.
Yeah.
I'm still looking for the actual reference for that.
The long-term cost to our entire planet for not switching. It's not just our health costs. It's the costs for the environment, which ultimately affects us. We fuck our environment up too much, then the possibility of even producing as much food as we do now goes out the window.
Yeah,
but how do you
done ourselves a
get
lot
more
of damage.
green energy going?
But it's one of the
How do you get
reasons I
more
like
green
doing
energy?
science, is because at least I have the opportunity to try and either mitigate those or fix it. Like, my area is environmental monitoring at the end of the day.
So, yeah.
I
Jenny,
get to play with
your
lasers
mic is
for it.
very quiet, which is why.
How
Matt
do,
didn't
how do
realize
we
you were
get
saying.
more green energy going when we have idiot politicians like down in Texas right now who are blaming frozen windmills or wind turbines for all of their problems in Houston and freezing up and everything, when everybody knows that it was the gas lines and things? I mean, how do we battle?
Because America.
Stupid.
You have to. I guess that just comes down to I guess science communication, because it's easy to come out with misinformation. So those who are, I guess, the ones spreading proper critical thinking and the knowledge that kind of goes along with it, just have to be so repetitive. You have to say it again and again and again, because you have to. But even then, it's still not a battle I think that will ever be completely won. It's just hopefully a battle I think that we need to turn a bit more in our favor.
I say
Yeah,
if you
all
have
the wind
to,
turbines here in Wisconsin are working.
I say if you have to, maybe even lean in a little bit to their xenophobia and their racism, where it's like, you think we have a refugee crisis now, wait until the Middle East is too hot for human habitation. Where do you think they're gonna go? Like, I feel bad doing it, but if it gets them to start thinking, like, I'm at ends justify the means, like, for some things anyway, not all things, but for this one, I'm ends justify the means. I'll lean into their racism and their xenophobia just a little bit, by saying, all of those brown-skinned Muslims that you don't want in your country, yeah, they're going to have nowhere to go. When the entire Middle East empties of people, they're going to go everywhere else in the world that's still habitable. And if you don't want them in your backyard, then maybe you should, care about a Green New Deal and getting renewable energy.
The problem is a lot of them don't actually think it's a problem.
But I already know what their answer will be to that. If you appeal to their bigotries, they're going to say, nuke the place, destroy it all. Because that's the typical attitude a lot of them have.
But a lot of them just don't think it's going to be a problem. They're like, no, that's not happening. Look, see, there's still people in the community that that think the scientists are like. I've heard it's conspiratorial thinking a lot of the time, but the arguments people will give is, oh no, but the scientists are all biased, or if they say something against the mainstream, they lose their jobs. I'm like, no, you lose your job when you do bad science, but that's one of the few industries where that seems to actually be the case.
Yeah,
as long as you don't become a politician with it.
And there's always a double standard to that science thing, isn't it? It's like, I'm going to believe the science that I think supports me, but I'm not going to believe the rest of it because I couldn't give a shit.
I mean, look, to be honest, I have done that in the past, and hopefully I don't do it again, but it happens. And
bit like that group we were talking about on my stream earlier. Jen, they tend to cherry pick the science.
Well, the double standards we never even got into it, but the double standards directed at trans people is just absolutely mind-numbing.
Yeah,
and that could be a show all on its own.
That's yeah.
See, what I don't get is why, they question scientists that are getting, what, a $45,000 a year grant, maybe to do their science. But they don't care about the heavily invested fossil fuel companies that, would be paying way more to get the results they want. Like, I'm just saying.
I'm on 35K Australian a year, and I'm lucky. That's the new amount that they're giving to people here. They upped it. I think I put it in the chat for anyone who
Well,
saw
that's
it.
what happens when you go to the University of YouTube.
But so what they did is they increased how much they gave us from 27 a year to 35. That is for PhD students. You get a bit more in Australia if you're postdoc. Actually, Australia's pretty good. You get more than most countries once you have a PhD, but until then, you're not on a lot. And that's if you get scholarship. But they did that by giving it to less people.
You're on YouTube now. It won't be long before
But they
that.
realize that PhDs are real doctors.
So yeah,
Matt, you're on YouTube now. It won't be long before that nice NASA shill money starts coming your way, man. Just trust me.
I'm still waiting. Yeah, I know. I hope so because I want that money.
That's not the money from George Soros, is it? Or am I thinking of something different?
That's the NASA shill check money. We anyone who's sort of like isn't a flat earther on YouTube gets it apparently.
I'm still waiting to find out how to get it. And apparently they can use artificial bots to give you more subscribers and what views. I'm like, I'll take that.
I want to keep the conversation going a little longer than what we normally would. We normally try to finish about now to allow for Purple, but I know Purple will have to head off soon to start getting his stream going. So everybody, when this stream ends, we'll probably end about half an hour before Purple's ready to go. Get over there to Purple's stream and follow that and catch onto that, because some of this conversation will probably carry over. It often does. And just follow Purple, because Purple's awesome. So did you want to say anything about your show that's coming out, Purple?
No, nothing particular.
Just go over there to watch it. Put the link in the chat.
It's really most just people hanging out, talking about whatever they feel like talking about.
Which is pretty much how this ends up as well.
Yeah, we tend to wind up, diverging off and going on different topics every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like a really long after party.
It is.
It's an after party without a show before it.
Yeah.
Well, it does have one now, though, doesn't it?
Maybe
but the after party came before the show.
Party. Maybe you should call it the before party.
No, I said we're the warm-up band.
Yeah, we're the warm-up band, yeah. to Purple's main attraction.
We're now called the Crickets.
Purple, when are you going to do that show that you told me about? What did you title it? Practical uses for amphibians.
I'm sorry, what was that one?
Never mind.
Yeah. Oh, we all missed it. Your mic is very soft, Jenny.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't help it.
I heard something about practical use for amphibians.
I think I'm going to have to jump off actually because I'm starting to fall asleep again. It is like 5 a.m. here.
I'm surprised
Thank you for joining us,
here, Jeff.
Yeah. Okay. I'll see you later.
Later on.
Bye, Jeff.
Bye, Jeff.
So I'm sorry for interrupting you, Matt. Where were you at before I interrupted?
I'm a bit lost, but the one thing I was thinking in terms of double standards, a lot of people like to say, oh yeah, but the scientists get all this money, or look at the grants for all these millions, but they don't get paid out of that. Like, that's just to purchase equipment. Scientific equipment to do proper research in most cases is very expensive. If you want any advances, it's expensive, and you don't. But the money you make back in the long run, if you're patient, is way more than most other industries. It's just you need a lot to start with. Like, the returns from science when it comes out and finds positive results can be very, very impressive. But people seem to have very, very short-term views. Explaining to people, yeah, you got to put in 10 million now. You'll get $1 billion back, but it'll be in 20 years' time. It's a bit harder to sell than put in $1 million and you'll get $2 million next year.
Yeah, science is a long-term investment, and a lot of companies won't do it.
Are scientists working on how to dispose of nuclear waste safely and correctly? That would solve a lot of the energy problems.
I mean, they are working on it.
Dispose of nuclear waste.
The problem is science is very slow, and it takes decades to make the big discoveries that most people will hear about in the news. And so most of these areas, someone is doing it. It's whether they've got enough funding or whether they're getting anywhere. That's the other one. So, oh yeah, we made some advances over 20 years. Doesn't sound as exciting as a headline that reads, "Oh, scientists have discovered this," or like for what was us this morning, scientists have landed, the most sophisticated probe on Mars yet. Well, yes, but there is a lot of science that went behind doing that.
Which
But
this
this
also
is what I
comes
was
back
saying
to Kitty's
on-
thing of post-scarcity, because if you end up achieving a post-scarcity society, that the economics of all of that changes. You've got this abundance of energy, you've got this abundance of resources, and then all of a sudden you move from a society like ours where we're driven by its daily survival to a society that's then driven by its achievement. And in that situation, the money thrown at science to achieve new things is irrelevant compared to the amount that you have in a post-scarcity society. So exponentially, you actually get even better at being post-scarcity because your science gets better and better and better and better. You have more money to put into it. People have more time to put into it because there's more money put into it. You could eventually end up with a Star Trek utopian where money doesn't even make any sense anymore. And everyone just has that you can take what you want because we've got enough excess.
My only thing on that is that humans.
Yeah,
Jetty was.
She's gone. Bye, Jen.
Yeah. I was just going to say on that though, humans do, generally speaking, tend to be greedy. We tend to like having more and more. So you generally need to kind of appeal to that in some way. But I guess, what you were saying, if you had enough of all your basic needs, then maybe you could try and tailor the economy so that people's greed actually works for the betterment. That's why I think that it's kind of like you can keep most of the systems we have. You just change them so the rules make it that the goals of making money are also in line with the goals of making other people's lives better.
Yeah,
but
exactly how you do that, that's a bit harder. But you could look at potentially things like circular economy, which I did a tiny bit of last year.
Yeah.
Well, as long as you've got the Trumps and the Kenneth Copelands in this world, there's going to be a vast amount of cash hidden away.
Greed slows down development.
And as a species, our goal right now is greed. Our goal right now is to take as much as we can off the planet, hide it somewhere, destroy some other land, act like our inheritors aren't going to have to deal with that. So we'd have to change what we do.
Yeah, it's going to require an ideological and a shift within us away from a concept of greed to a concept of just a universal wealth rather than an individual wealth.
Because one of the problems you run up against is that people feel they need a scorecard. They need some way to show that they're better than other people.
Yeah.
And historically, a lot of that has been tied up in wealth, that you have more money than the neighbors, so you're better.
See,
which is an extreme insecurity.
To achievement, we would be a better society. But achieving for society is better. If we praise that more than people achieving monetary wealth, then you get that change. You would slowly get that change. So people would be doing things for making their achievements rather than making money.
And definitely a global approach to all this will be very important. The problem I see with it being, say, a global government, one government for the whole planet, is the problem of injustice that can arise when somebody's unfairly targeted. And right now with different borders in different countries, there's at least an escape route for a lot of people where that would be gone. Imagine if the government running things was something like Saudi Arabia running the whole country. That would be awful, and that's what their goal is.
An interesting aspect to this is it may not be Earth where this change in the way humanity happens. Because ultimately for us to in space, ultimately for us to colonize other worlds like Mars or anywhere else that we decide to colonize, we're going to initially send what we perceive as our brightest and best, and most of those people are going to be driven by their achievements rather than their personal wealth, because personal wealth won't matter in a colony to start off with.
Yeah.
And if that changes the attitude over time within the colony, then they're still not going to care about the personal wealth. They're going to care about what the colony itself can achieve.
So, just a math question.
The attitude of future Mars colony might be totally different to the attitude to people on Earth.
But would they have to be swingers to keep the species going?
Depends on how many you send.
I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't some sort of interplanetary conflict where the best and brightest, Mars is doing great, and Earth is like, hey, kind of like, King George.
We set you up, give it all back.
There's actually one of the Call of Duties is exactly that, where Mars attacks Earth.
And The Expanse as well.
Yeah.
Was about that, I think. Wasn't The Expanse?
Not entirely, but there was an aspect of one of the storylines about the fighting between the Belters, Mars, and Earth, and but basically because Earth was greedy as all fuck.
Hey, Matt,
that's why they're not practicing on the moon.
Yeah.
Matt,
well,
can you make
also. Sorry, go ahead, Kitty.
No, I was going to say, can you make a space laser to change the weather? Because it's winter here, and it's as hot as Perth, Australia right now at night. It's the same temperature. So can you get on that and fix that?
Wait, where are you, Kitty?
In Florida.
Yeah, but the problem is the space laser is going to pump more energy into it. So I'm only going to be able to make it hotter.
Although what you could do is if you warm up an area that's further north, you'd have a movement of airflow, and then that could cool down Florida.
Yeah,
but then you end up... you could target... How about you target Washington?
Yeah.
Because that's about directly north of it. You burn them out, and we deal with a few less politicians.
Fine with us. Leave Canada alone. We're happy with the weather here.
I'll fire it south. Don't worry. I'm not going to...
How is Florida being too hot when, Texas and Tennessee are freezing?
Because Florida just doesn't give any fucks. There was a couple years ago, there was snow in every state but Florida. Hawaii had snow, but Florida didn't.
Yeah. People in Texas are having their pipes freezing, so they have no drinking water.
And yet it's almost 80 fucking degrees here, and I'm burning up.
It's going to be 76. It's going to be 76 tomorrow in Southern California.
And it's actually nice here today in Perth, Australia.
I know, the temperature here right now is the exact same as in Perth, Australia. Right now. And
I'm in the middle of the day.
And humid. Yikes.
Yeah, it is very humid. It literally, Florida is fucking Australia light, located in Satan's taint. I don't like it. It's awful.
Satan's
it is hot.
Taint.
It's the only place I've been where you take a shower and you gotta dry off 3 times. The only place.
Love you, Kitty. So
we should start.
We should start winding up and let people give themselves a show. I'll let you go first, Peps, because you might have to hop out. So
I've been setting up in background here, so I'm doing okay.
Well, as we've already said, Peps has got a stream coming up in about 40 minutes. That will be the show that this show is a precursor to. Midnight Mid-America.
Yep.
And please follow over there and have a chat to there. Peps will drop the link in the description.
Yeah, I do random chats Wednesdays at noon and Thursdays at midnight Central Standard Time. And usually on the shills Friday evenings at 7.
Awesome.
Dog, what are you doing?
Nothing. I've got some content coming up soon, I hope. I may have a little bit of content coming up soon. Just so I'm thinking of rewriting the Bible. Not rewriting it, and keep it as it is, but just change the word in a bit to make it more plausible to the Christians. Maybe a Christian may read one then, rather than all the atheists reading the Bible.
Well, all you have to do is put quotes around. Mary was visited by the Holy Ghost.
Well, it said change in the beginning to at the beginning of time, or God changed God's name to the universe. Here, henceforth known as the universe. And get rid of all the thou shalt and change that to you shall, and make all the orders stand out and make it more readable, more street for the kids. But that will
The
probably
Bible
be
does the
extreme.
Bronx.
Well,
That's the name of my OnlyFans.
It's awesome, dog.
Sorry, Will?
Oh, I said that's the title of my OnlyFans.
The Bible does the Bronx.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Kitty, what have you got happening?
Not sure. Aside from, a little recovery, like it's been a very long day. I'm probably gonna, take my makeup off, go to bed soon. But like I will just say I did my makeup in a moving car at night. And I think it came out pretty damn good, all things considered. So
Awesome,
we
Kitty.
appreciate
You're
you. Thank you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
But like no, the problem with having 16 inches plus less hair is the fact that when I have it down, like it's so hot on my neck. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to put it up into my little derpy little ponytail.
Kids are wonderful, aren't they?
Oh, gotta love them.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Randolph.
Oh man.
Will should put his hair in a ponytail.
I do.
Probably is in a ponytail.
At night, I have to put these bad boys up in ponytails.
You should see how he presents his genitals.
It's under his pillow at the moment, his hair.
Hey, I thought that we were just gonna keep that between us.
Oh, I'm sorry, babe.
The Viking beard down there. It's been a year. I've been home for a year. Okay.
Right now.
Full Viking beard, with braids and everything.
Wow.
All I'm thinking of is Scary Movie with the fucking the bush.
Wow.
That's
This
the
went down
image
the
that
gutter
just
quickly.
got put into my noggin.
Take my good hand.
Randolph, what have you got coming up?
Well, I'll be hosting with Tart Live on the 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time or 5 p.m. Pacific Time. We'll be promoting a number of small atheism YouTube channels that aren't very well known and trying to help them get more recognition. So that you can find out about that channel from www.tart.live. So they're posting this, and we may turn this into a regular feature that we do once in a while to try to get more atheists showcased and promoted. So that'll be a great thing. Really looking forward to that. I'm also continuing with work on the True North Talk Studio to have this call-in program, atheism call-in program set up with Neil, and was just doing some vinyl siding work tonight. So it is coming along, but it's probably a couple of months away before we really get very far. And I like the fire on Kitty's screen.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That looks great. You can find out more about True North Talk at www.truenorthtalk.ca. And as far as Canadian atheists go, I'm still doing work with that, trying to normalize atheism in Canadian society and hopefully have that catch on around the world. You can find out more there at www.canadianatheists.ca. Thank you very much for inviting me on. I'm sorry I couldn't get in here until later, but
that's fine,
it's a
Randall.
pleasure to be here. And
It's
nice
always
to meet everybody.
You're always invited, man.
You're always invited.
Yeah, and it's nice to meet you, Matt. I don't think we've spoken before.
Maybe briefly on one of the streams, mate, I think. Potentially, but yes. At least we can officially meet now.
Yes. And
I'm
Matt,
sure I'll see you around.
What you got coming up this weekend? I'm sure you've got something to stun us.
Tomorrow, I'm hopefully going to make the video and then try and get it edited either by the end of tomorrow or Sunday. I'm going to make a quick video on which is the best color lightsaber from a science point of view. That's my next video.
Oh,
I've got the script written. It's only going to be a quick one, only a couple of minutes, so hopefully that's good. I made it to 200 subs the other day, yesterday, which was really nice. So, yay, mini milestone. But
everyone's subs details are down below in the description. If you can't see them there, you might have to refresh the screen because I've been adding them as people joined. But everyone's links are down there. Please go and subscribe to everyone. it's for support the community, basically. Support the community. Go sub and go watch. And some of the content people make, well, everyone's content here is awesome, but there's so much good content out there in the communities that keep checking it out and find out what's good for you. As far as I go, Will and I, of course, have another What the Fuck show next Friday. I'm not exactly sure what we're doing, and I've got a bit of mucking around to make that work because I'll actually be away when we do it. But we've got a stream next Friday for the What the Fuck show. I've been talking about it for weeks that Kitty and I will be doing our stream. I'm hoping to do that before I go away, and I'm gonna have a good solid talk to her tomorrow to make sure that kind of happens. But we will get onto that, and that'll be about domestic violence. So that will be a hard push little.
And I have started posting content on the Godless Sewing channel. So go subscribe.
Yeah.
It's going to be a hodgepodge, just like me. So expect stuff from every angle all over the place. I'm just now fighting and uploading.
Yeah.
So, it's bits and pieces of this right now, but coming soon.
Yeah.
So go subscribe. Channel's finally up.
So, yeah. So, again, thank you everybody for joining us. Please hop over onto that's not enough for you. You're worth way more than $5,000, Kitty. Thank you everybody for joining us here, both in the chat and everybody. Yeah, everybody on stream and everybody in chat. Please go over to Purple's. I believe it's been linked in there. Is that the True North Talk? Is it?
TrueNorthTalk.ca is for the True North Talk show.
Oh, that's for you, Randolph, is it? Yep. Please go over to Purple's channel. His link is down below in the description. And hop on to Midnight Mid-America. It's starting in about half an hour. Thank you all for joining me. This has been amazing. Matt, I will have to talk to you because I want to try and organize doing another Stump Jen at a time that suits you so we can have a bit of a chat. And hopefully do that sometime over the weekend if you're available. So that'd be cool.
Should be.
And yeah, so thank you everybody once again, and we will see you all on the next one.
Okay, thanks for having us.
You guys.
See you later. My crickets say bye too. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks Will and Jen for the invite. Brilliant.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.